for another reaction. Today I'm starting a new person named Wendigoon. I know a tiny bit about Wendigoon. I've seen a few of his, not necessarily videos, I've seen some TikToks with him in it. Just talking about random stuff, and I don't remember exactly what it was. It was a while ago, but I've seen him and Mr. Ballin a little bit, so I'm starting both of them today. We're gonna start this conspiracy theory iceberg. There's no way I'm doing all of it right now. I'm probably gonna cut it up into like either 8 parts or maybe 9 parts. I don't know. It depends on how like the tiers kind of go. I know. I think it's done by each tier, and I think this is a mega video because I think he individually uploaded them. Yeah, let's get into this. I'm pretty excited. Yeah, let's go.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg. In this series we will look at everything from ancient cults and concepts of old world gods to theories of intelligent life among the stars.
Oh, and just for a little disclaimer, I don't necessarily believe in any part of this. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really cool. And I'll give you like how plausible I think it is for some of them. For some of them, I'm just not even going to say anything because some of them are just kind of dumb, let's be honest. But for some of them, they might actually kind of have some, sustenance in them. So I'll give you a little like rating almost for some of them. But yeah, let's continue.
And beneath our feet, to government conspiracies and secret missions to hide the world from forbidden knowledge, and of course, giant humanoids existing in the caverns within the hollow earth. If you can imagine anything from unfathomable to weird, the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg has you covered. Now, as many of you probably know, this is a series that I finished a few months ago. However, in the beginning, this was the series that jump-started my channel. And I understand that it can be a lot.
Yeah, I think he has like 2 million subscribers or something.
From square one. So to make it a bit easier for you, I made this video where I took out all of the intros and outros to give you one straight run-through of the entire series. Now, like
Awesome.
I said, I began this series right whenever I was starting out on YouTube. Because of that, I really didn't know what I was doing from a presentation or technical angle. So because of that,
How I am right now.
the first couple videos in the series are just me talking into an iPhone camera with no microphone. And I totally understand if that's too amateur or grating for you. So to make it a bit easier, in the description, I have put timestamps for where each original video began and left off at. So if you don't feel like you want to sit through one of the videos, you can go to the timestamp and skip forward to the next one and see if it's any better. But I can confidently say, given the vast amount of topics and insanity that this iceberg covers, I know there's something in there for you. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy the series, but first of all, and as always, thank you for watching. Boy, am I excited.
Oh yeah, it is such a dramatic change.
Called the Iceberg Conspiracy List.
It's not that bad.
For those of you who don't know, it is a picture of an iceberg, and on it there are several separate tiers that gauge conspiracy theories from how known they are to how unknown they are. I'll actually throw it up now so you can look at it. As you can see, it is huge. There are several variations.
Holy crap. No wonder it took 9 hours.
Because it is the most well structured with different tiers and specifics for what each tier means, but it also is the most comprehensive. As I tried to find research for this, I'm telling you there was none. Like, no one had done a full breakdown of it. There's a couple people who did one or two. And then
could see why.
Researching it, people were saying that everyone who did full reviews of it was having their videos taken down. So we'll see what happens. So I decided, who better to do it?
Well, the good thing is I think his videos are still up, so I think we're okay.
Than me. Technically, a lot of people. That doesn't matter. What I'm going to do is, because this thing is huge, every one of these phrases can lead you down an entire rabbit hole of research and investigation. Some of them are well-known stuff like UFOs or Bigfoot, but as you get into some of these later ones, it gets creepy. Like, you drag over some pretty scary ones like human flesh markets or children trapped in floors and things such as, but once you get really far into it, like tier 9, tier 10 stuff, it gets like God's ego death, or the universe was created as a test, and things like that.
Okay, I've heard that.
Like these whole networks and stories behind them, but just aren't commonly known. And I'll go ahead and say right now, none of what I'm talking about means I believe it per se. I'm simply conveying what conspiracy is because I think it's cool, and some of these are awesome. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to do a quick run through of the tier 1.
And I'll give you like plausibility too.
Like I said, the further you go down, the more crazy they get, so this one's pretty much to whet your appetite. Although there is a lot of cool stuff at this tier that I learned in research for this video. Some of the ones we'll get into in later videos are absolutely crazy, like the City of Broken Candles or the Valley of Headless Men,
Bro, he's
and
hyping
such
me
as.
up.
But like I said, I'm going to go through the entire chart.
Bro,
So
that makes me
without
want
further
it
ado,
makes me want to
the
watch
title
more.
and description for tier 1 is
Oh,
Crazy Head, and the description reads, mainstream conspiracies and
oh my
unsolved
god, that
mysteries.
picture.
Most of this stuff is well documented and known to a good portion of the Western citizens. A lot of common theories may be grouped in broader terms or may not even appear on the chart at all considering their meaning and popularity. Also, quick disclaimer on this first tier, this doesn't really apply to the others, but some of these are so well known or you've heard so many times I'm not even going to cover them, like
Okay.
fake news
Makes
or
sense.
Bigfoot or UFOs. Like, we
Okay.
all
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
I don't need to go into detail about them. But without further ado, let's get into this.
Okay.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, that makes
First
sense.
up, we have Big Pharma. Most of you know about this.
Okay, I've heard this one. Do I think it's real? I mean, plausible it could be. I mean, it's possible. That I think it's like a bunch of like all the pharmaceutical companies are kind of in league with each other, which I mean, everyone's necessarily in league with each other. I don't think it's a big giant conspiracy or anything. I don't think, but you know.
It's pretty much just a huge encompassing theory that pharmaceutical companies suppress vaccines and cures that are made in order to make money off of treatment.
Oh, wait, that was not what I thought it was. Okay, that one's less. Alright, I definitely don't think that one's plausible. I don't think they would suppress vaccines and all that, but you never know. I was thinking it was like a money thing. Maybe they hike up prices and stuff for stuff that doesn't cost as much. I was thinking along those lines.
Atlantis. Original records of Atlantis date back to Greek times, I believe, between Sparta and Athens, of a continent
I could believe
located
this one.
somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. And since they couldn't have got to North America, that would require there to be something in between that has since disappeared or sank. Next up, we have one of the first ones that I didn't know about until getting into this.
Yeah, I don't know this either.
Nostradamus was an old philosopher who came up with several of the constellations and discovering the night sky, and it is believed that several of his predictions came true later, such as World War II and the Great London Fire. However, from doing my own research, this is kind of BS because, like for example, the London Fire, he said that there would be bad things happening in London, and then a bad thing happened in London. So,
bruh,
yeah,
that's horrible.
Oh
yeah, I know this one.
Familiar with this, but
yeah,
it essentially says that
this one's creepy.
Universes that cross over.
I don't believe this one. I have such bad memory that I could see myself messing up on stuff
with each other in minor ways that we're not aware of. For example, those who remember the Bernstein Bears
yeah,
in their childhood,
Berenstain Bears.
Actually, the Bernstein Bears, and that several discrepancies like that exist. Like the Monopoly Man has no monocle, and yada yada yada. This is a cool one. It's very deep. It goes on for itself. So if you're interested, check it out. Next is Malaysian Flight 370, which disappeared somewhere over the Indian Ocean. The conspiracy states that
I think I've heard this one.
There is a U.S. military base there, and more than likely the plane was either hijacked and flying towards it or flew too close to it, to which the U.S. military shot it down and covered up all evidence of it. Although
probably not.
I feel that
they probably
there's
just
a lot of moving parts in that
fell into the ocean essentially.
The GMO conspiracy regards GMOs that are in several foods, from fast food and markets and things such as, which are used in this conspiracy to cause food shortages and hunger in people. So essentially the whole get the customer addicted idea. Orbs is
not plausible. I don't think plausible.
It's referring to
orbs.
Orbs that are seen in photographs.
It's like ghost stuff.
In the sunlight. So, you know, dust, particles, things such as. But the conspiracy says that it is a paranormal or supernatural occurrence. So yeah. The New World Order, for those that aren't familiar,
yeah, this is that crazy one.
It details that there will be a one world government or one world order in the end times. And this will be in much more specific detail as we get later on into the Iceberg. But at this tier, it's basically just referring to the idea that all governments want to come together to make one government. I know I keep like advertising later into the Iceberg, but there's good reason for it. Some of the ones down there are insane and get into specifics of how one world government can be achieved and things such as. So stay tuned.
Ooh.
Next is the Nibiru Cataclysm.
I've never heard this.
Is a planet, or also known as Planet X, that was predicted by
I remember that in like 1990
to collide with the Earth in 2000.
I thought that was in 1995 that they discovered Planet X, or thought they did, or something like that.
Three, so pretty well debunked. But the term is still used to apply to an idea that a meteor or any other body could hit the planet one day and kill us all. Now we get into the fun stuff. The
Oh yeah,
Bilderberg meetings is
I
an
don't know
event
this
that
either.
really does happen every year in which Western economists meet with European governments to discuss capitalism in the West from all the evidence I could find.
Hmm.
Obviously, there are several theories that come from this, especially since the fact the press isn't allowed and there are no notes to be taken. So, a group of world elites talking behind closed doors in high places. Nice.
Hmm.
Transhumanism is more of a philosophy than a theory, really. It applies a lot to anarchist rings, oddly enough, and it's essentially the idea that humans can be further expanded on or bettered through augmentation of computer parts and like cyber
Bro, that's Elon Musk right now.
cybernetics and things such as BEK or black-eyed kids is a recurring phenomenon in the supernatural community of small children appearing with blacked out eyes. You can follow this rabbit trail pretty far, but pretty much surface level, it's just creepy kids who appear whenever tragedy happens. So people chalk it up to ghosts or extraterrestrials or what have you. Next is Antarctica, which there is a slew of Antarctic conspiracy theories. Everything ranging from giant holes appearing in the middle of Antarctica to
We
government
really
bases
don't
being
know.
down there to that's where the world elites hide. I mean, you could spin forever on this. So moving on. Next is the basement tapes. For those of you that don't know, before the Columbine shooting,
Basement.
the two shooters made a series of
Oh, I
videos
haven't. I haven't heard that in so long. Columbine. That was so horrible. I haven't heard that in so long.
telling what they were going to do, how they were going to do it, and generally talking about how they hate people in their school and there needs to be a cleansing and things such as. These tapes still
Horrible
exist,
people.
although the conspiracy resides in no one knows who has them. However, randomly
For good reason.
portions of them will appear online, leaving people to believe that they're out there, maybe exchanging hands, but no one knows where they're at. Next up, we've got Operation Northwoods. This is a
I don't know this one
rather
either.
well documented case, but essentially during the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was reports put out by the CIA that said to warrant a war with Cuba, they should commit acts of terrorism against U.S. citizens and then blame them on Cuba to justify a war.
Is this a theory?
Yep. Next up
Is this a theory? There's literally unclassified documents.
to
I'm
justify
gonna stay away from that.
which.
Plausible.
Yep. Next up is PsyOps. This is also well documented. Just the fact that
That's like
the U.S.
where
government,
the
as well as other
government
governments,
experiments?
is known to employ psychological warfare from noises to conditions and supply rations and things like that. The Vela incident is an event occurred off the coast of South Africa in 1979. What happened is a system of satellites known as the Vela satellites captured two back-to-back giant flashes for seemingly no reason. However,
Weird.
after reading into it, it was probably just an unsanctioned nuclear test because this satellite system had caught them before and they looked similar. And the whole conspiracy is just because
unsanctioned
scripted tests that day. So yeah, probably just nuke testing. Next we have giants. While this one seems vague, later tiers get into it more specifically. But essentially, in the Old Testament of the Bible, there are several references to giants happening, and obviously today there doesn't seem to be any. However, this conspiracy, as we get into it later, applies to the deep state and cover-ups and things such as, so I don't want to spoil any of it yet, but this is a good mention that asterisk mark, so to speak. We'll get to it later. Padma McCord is an interesting one. There's a lady online by the name of Padma McCord who owns, for some reason, thousands, if not millions of URLs, which, looking at this on the outside, you'd say, oh, it's some company using a name or whatever, until you go to the URLs and it's just pictures of her face photoshopped onto other women for some reason. And every one of these websites has millions of backlinks to other websites, which someone who knows tech may know more about.
AI?
I have no clue why.
Maybe?
It's just creepy. The Elisa Lam incident.
I've heard this one.
For those who haven't trolled around on creepy internet videos like I have, you may not know who Elisa Lam is. But it is a story that is worth your time. She was a college student, I believe, at the Hotel Cecile in California, who for some reason, it's seen in security camera videos, runs onto an elevator, freaking out, keeps jerking around thinking something's following her, runs to her room, and is never seen alive again until she's found 3 days later in the water tank of the hotel. There was never any evidence of a killing, no one was ever found in connection to it, and it is one of the wildest videos ever to watch, knowing that she was never followed and there was never evidence of anyone following her. It's really strange. I'll leave you to look into this one yourself, but it was one of the first videos I remember that kind of got me into this whole, I don't know, like creepy, dark web, whatever. The Terra Calico picture. This one's just sad. There was a woman.
Alright, I'm just gonna probably stop saying I don't know them because it's kind of seeming like I don't know most of these. I've only known like a few, so I'm just gonna stop saying that now because obviously I don't know this one either.
Named Terra Calico, who's suspected to be abducted in the early 90s, and then a few months later, a picture of her bound and gagged turned up in a parking lot around the area she was kidnapped. It leaves a lot of questions of why the picture was left there,
Weird.
what any of it means, especially since it was just in some random convenience store parking lot. But like I said, this is just sad. The Mad Gasser of Mattoon. I have never heard of this one before until researching it, but apparently in the 40s there was a series of gas attacks that occurred in Mattoon, Illinois, which investigators mostly chalked up to mass hysteria and people who left their fuel lines running, but everyone who it happened to, which was dozens of cases, claimed that it was an individual that ran up to them and attacked them with invisible gas. So yeah, have fun with that one. COINTELPRO. Like Operation Northwoods, this one's pretty well documented and known at this point, but essentially before the Patriot Act became a thing, it's evidence of the FBI illegally spying on U.S. citizens to gain information, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, government bad. The Mao-Yale connection. This one pretty much just says that the old...
It's so weird because these government ones are like theory iceberg. Are they actually theories, or are they like unclassified documents that we now know this is what happened?
Communist emperor of China, Mao Zedong, was in secret connections with Yale University in ways to indoctrinate students and receive funding from them, and vice versa. From what I've seen, it's mostly just conspiracy jargon, but you can check it out for yourself. The I-70 killer. This is referring in the spring of 1992, there was a series of 6 murders of gas station clerks on the I-70 interstate, and no one was ever caught, but some sketches were given. From everything I've found, this is simply just a...
I feel like I work with this dude.
The Majestic 12 is a reference to a board member of 12 people put together by Harry Truman in 1947 to recover all alien spacecraft information and things such as. This relates back to Area 51, although it's a bit more specific in saying that there's a committee, so to speak, that looks over anything that happens with extraterrestrials. Also, Area 51 was also in this first tier list, but like I said, it's one of those that's so obvious there's no reason for me to talk about it. Red Squads are, again, a pretty well documented government thing that during the whole Red Scare of the 50s and 60s, there were groups of U.S. police officers whose sole purpose was to hunt down communist sympathizers and arrest them for whatever. The Secret was really hard to find information on because it's such a vague title.
Yeah, that's such a weird name.
I think it's referring to a book that essentially is a self-help book that says, thinking certain thoughts deliberately will change the course of your life. So,
I mean, that's kind of true. Like, it's kind of like placebo. Like, as long as you think positively, most of the time positive things will happen to you. I kind of believe that. That one seems pretty plausible.
Not sure why it's on there, but you know, we're still in tier 1, so whatever. Acupuncture is an interesting one. This relates back to the big pharma I mentioned at the beginning, and essentially says that acupuncture heals several diseases, but it is purposely put down and not given attention by mainstream media and doctors because it would put them out of business. So it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down. The Max Headroom incident.
I've heard this one.
Happened in 1987 in Chicago, when 2 broadcast stations suddenly cut out and cut to a video of a man wearing a Max Headroom costume, which is a character from British television, who began talking random jargon and swearing and then had someone spank him on camera, and then the broadcast cut out. What's interesting is that there's never been anyone named a suspect, there was never any evidence found, and it's pretty much become a whole Reddit thread trying to figure out who this person was, what happened, and name them. So it's an interesting mystery to go on, but From everything I could find, it was just two guys messing with the media. And then for the last one I'm going to cover in tier 1, we have the UN agenda. This is pretty much just relates to Agenda 21 and other conspiracies, which I'll talk about more in later tiers.
Okay.
The
I was
idea
like, I
that
don't
the
know what
UN
Agenda
is
21
trying
is.
to build itself towards a new world order. Tier 2's title is Deep Researcher, and it's described as theories and Twilight Zone level stuff. Most of these entries can easily be studied through the use of mainstream medias, but they require a good grasp of how the world works to be fully understood. Common people rarely go this deep. First up, we have lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is a well-known concept that during sleep, some people can control their dreams and what happens in them. I, for one, am one of these people. However, the theory comes in where people who can lucid dream can either affect things that happen in the real world or affect their thought process by manipulating things in the dreamscape. Next, world.
I'm so scared of lucid dreaming. I've thought about learning how to do it, but the more I hear about it, the more I hear people who do lucid dreaming have times when they have paralysis, like the sleep paralysis stuff. Not I've heard 2 people in real life had sleep paralysis, and I've heard in a few different videos that I've watched that people have sleep paralysis after doing lucid dreaming. I'm so scared of having sleep paralysis that I would just rather not mess with lucid dreaming at all.
Or affect their thought process by manipulating things in the dreamscape. Next up is MK Ultra.
Yeah,
MK Ultra is a rather well-known experiment that happened with the CIA in the 1970s, late 60s, in which people were brought in and influenced with psychotropics and other mind-altering drugs for the CIA to view the effects of and potentially use in PSYOPs, which again was something mentioned in Tier 1. This is a rather well-known event. Most of the theories stem from the idea that either it's still going on or it was done at a great larger scale than the populace is aware of. Next up we have hypnosis. Again, this is one of those establishing theories, but as we all know, hypnosis is influencing the watcher to either recall things from the past or implant memories and yada yada things such as. Next up we have fluoride. Fluoride has to do with the fact that in the US, fluoride is inserted into the tap water in order to help with tooth enamel and digestion and yada yada things such as. The conspiracy comes from the fact that fluoride is a chemical and can therefore chemically castrate or influence other biomechanical things in the body. So this will be more tied in later, but such as pineal gland calcification is believed to be a side effect of fluoride poisoning or fluoride control, as people believe. Speaking of, pineal gland calcification is the idea that the pineal gland in the body calcifies after a certain point. This is actually true, however, the side effects of the theory are not. The way the pineal gland works is it has to do with growth and hormone supplements in the body, but after someone passes puberty, it's not really needed anymore and the gland simply calcifies and dies out. The theory comes from the idea that things such as fluoride and other things taken in the body causes the gland to calcify and keeps us from reaching either our full brain or physical.
Alright, this one actually couldn't be possible. Because, I mean, you gotta think, there's some kids who just, they don't necessarily drink water. There could be kids who drink soda from 90% of their life, so there would be no possible way that this pineal gland thing could affect them. That's the only thing I could think of. There's no way I think this one could ever be true.
Potential. This goes into weird theories about how to uncalcify and things such as, but it is true that as you get older, you don't need the pineal gland anymore, so it kind of just withers away. Next up, we have cicada.
I've heard this one. This was so long ago.
3301, which was a large-scale codebreaker event that happened in 2012.
Yeah.
A random account
I remember this
with the name Cicada 3301 and had these large puzzles for people to solve. There have been a total of 3, with a new one being added every time the last one gets figured out. However, the third one, to this day, despite being posted in 2016, has still not been found out. The site says the reason for this is that they are recruiting code breakers for some kind of secret project that no one's aware of. It's a very interesting rabbit hole to go down. I may make a video on it someday. There's several videos out there, and give the third puzzle a look. You may be the code breaker that's wanted for whatever sleep activity they got planned. The McFly code is our first look at one of the more kooky ones. It is a belief that the Back to the Future movie predicted 9/11. The evidence of this is saying such as The shopping mall that takes place in the movie is Twin Pines Shopping Mall, or the fact that the first clock of the movie shows 9:55, which on a hand dial would be 9:11, and things such as, and this all connects to the idea that
It's a
people
bit
did 9/11 make
stretching.
movies and blah blah blah. You get it.
That's a
Dowsing
bit of a
or
stretch.
douse
Dowing
is an idea that using a fork of metal, people
or
can pick
dowsing.
up on sonic vibrations from the earth in order to find underground supplies of water, oil, etc. It's more of a wives' tale than anything now, but there is some truth to it when it comes to how people used to found oil
I didn't know that was fake. I always thought that was true. Wow.
refineries. However, the way this loops back into a theory is it's one of those establishing, once again, that there are sonic vibrations within the earth. Next up, we have Admiral Byrd, and this is one of the first really interesting ones, in my opinion.
Okay.
Admiral Byrd was sent to Antarctica shortly after World War II in something called Operation High Jump, which was essentially an idea to figure out whatever the Nazis were looking for in Antarctica during World War II, which relates to this place called Base 221, which was supposedly a Nazi outpost in Antarctica. When he returned back, he was put into isolation for 36 hours and was told not to speak of what he found to anyone under any circumstances, to which he was then given the Medal of Honor and told to leave. While this is odd, many connect it to the idea of what the Nazis were looking for in the first place, which is something known as Agartha. Which brings us into our next topic.
Oh, this is the hollow thing, isn't
In
it? The
theory,
hollow earth?
Agartha is a civilization located beneath the earth. This gets into a larger idea called hollow earth theory. That inside of the earth, it is essentially a flipped gravitational pull, and there's an entire world operating beneath us. What's interesting throughout history is how different civilizations and leaders have been dedicated to finding this quote-unquote Agartha, such as Hitler during World War II, and other ancient tribes have tales of people that live beneath. How that's connected is since Agartha is what Germany was looking for in World War II, and since that's where Admiral Byrd went to go look and then was told to shut up and never talk about it, many believe Admiral Byrd found Agartha and then was told to simply never talk about it. Next up, we have Weather Control, or HARP. HARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, which is an actual military base located in Alaska. The purpose of this base is to monitor weather activity, although many have accused it as being a weather control base, such as Hugo Chavez saying that the earthquakes that occurred in South America were due to meddling at the HARP location in Alaska. This goes deeper. There's a lot of people who trace the weather around the area to look for signs on it, so you can check it out yourself. But basically, the idea in Alaska that the government has a weather control base.
I think that is not that, but I think you can control the weather. I think it's in Dubai, and people in Dubai do that. They like throw stuff up in the clouds and it creates rain, so they kind of control the weather. Well, it's kind of true, but I don't know if the harp thing would be true.
Freemasons is another one of those establishing ideas. It essentially goes off of the well-known idea that the Masons are shady and they influence several politics and events that happen around the world. So this is another one of those asterisk ones. Keep the Masons in mind for things that come later. The 23 Enigma is simply
this one.
An idea that the number...
Oh, no, wait. That was 21 agenda or something like that.
23 is suspicious throughout history in things such as dates and events, a number of casualties, and things such as. You can look in this one yourself. It's really long. There's even a movie about it starring Jim Carrey, but essentially the idea that the number 23 is to be avoided. Next up, we have astral projection.
Yeah, I've heard
Astral
this.
projection relates a lot to lucid dreaming, although it's a little bit different. The idea of astral projection is that while sleeping or in a trance-like state, someone can remove their soul or their consciousness from their body and walk around and influence things. Experiments with this include hospitals who have put messages on the roof, and people who claim to astrally project have projected above the hospital, so to speak, been able to read what was on the roof, come back down, and tell the doctors what they saw. Next up, we have succubi. This will relate more...
That was throwing me so off. I was hearing like a hissing and I thought it was in my room, but I think it's in his video.
On, such as giants, but essentially the idea is that there are these supernatural entities disguised as women that feed off of men's energy by appearing as a sexual being or feeding off of their life force or things such as. Eastern philosophy is incredibly vague. I can only imagine this is also a setup as it applies to Hinduism and Taoism and just general ideas of spirituality, yin and yang, so on and so forth. Nephilim is what I was referring to earlier when speaking of giants. Nephilim is a more specific concept. Specifically in the Old Testament, it says that some of the angels that fell to earth whenever Satan was cast out had children with humans on earth,
Mm-hmm.
and that created creatures known as Nephilim, or giants. In the Old Testament, several of the tribes that were wiped out or ordered to be wiped out by God were these Nephilim creatures. Famous characters such as Goliath from the Bible are specific
Mm-hmm.
instances of it. Where this goes further is the idea that they still exist in modern day, or small tribes and civilizations are made up of them. The missing cosmonauts relates to the Cold War space race time before Yuri Gagarin was successfully shot into space, that
Mm-hmm.
Russia shot up several other people, but since they all died or never made it back to Earth, they simply kept it quiet as a way to not cause bad publicity during the Cold
All right, that one's super plausible. I mean, come on, come on.
War. This one is definitely more feasible than others on the list. The
Yeah.
idea that the Russian government would cover up failures in its space program, but it does make it horrifying to think about how many people could have died in the search for the man in space. The
Yeah.
Yalta Pass is an interesting one that I will absolutely make a video on someday. But the short version is 9 researchers went missing in Russia in the Siberian area, and when they went to be found, they were all dead, either from having all of their bones shattered, their jaws ripped off, other horrifying scenarios that in no way seemed natural, to the point that the coroner's report on it says they were killed by a, quote, overwhelming compelling force, which could be literally anything.
Yeah, what is that?
Like I said, it's a very interesting story and very creepy.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yourself. Declassified documents is also super vague. This is probably just referring to the JFK files and other government documents that have been released in recent years, and the fact that they proved and disproved several conspiracy theories. So, yeah, go figure. Summoning is also a setup concept.
I was about to say, that's vague.
Basically just the idea that people can bring in evil or good entities, either through actions or rituals. So specific supernatural beings can be conjured up by an individual. One of which is another concept on the iceberg, tulpas. Tulpas are what we would traditionally figure as an imaginary friend. Essentially the idea that someone can think an entity up so much and imagine them to the point that a spirit inhabits that being. So the idea that imaginary friends kids have, or ideas that always set in your mind, are not merely ideas, but are now possessed by a specific entity.
Oh, that's
so
creepy.
Don't worry about that monster under the bed too much. Operation Bluebeam was an idea put forward by Sergey, whatever, Manast, which said that NASA was working with the UN and world governments to pose a new religion in which NASA would fake the second coming of Christ in order to set up the Antichrist as the Godhead. And it essentially relates
Bro,
to
this one's a bit out there.
The idea that all world governments are working together to destroy the population, and he called this entire thing Operation Bluebeam. So yeah, occult knowledge is also a super vague one. Basically, the just knowledge of the occult itself. So
I was about to say, I don't even know really what the occult means.
Occult's defined as anything that is supernatural but not strictly spiritual. So werewolves, monsters,
okay,
creatures of the night, etc., etc. Again, this is another setup. It just occurred to me that we are not like even halfway done. Magica was weird to find anything for, mostly because I think.
Oh, I mean, he meant halfway done with the just this tier.
Game of the same name. But from the best I can figure, Magica is essentially the idea that magic is divided into 5 categories. That is the arcane, the illusionary, the aura, manipulation, and elemental. So I could be completely off, but that's all I could find. Next we have the shelled or firmament earth.
This is religion.
Genesis in the Bible, that before the flood, the earth was covered with a firmament, or essentially a wrapping of water that allowed oxygen to flourish and things such as. Now it's mentioned in the flood that that firmament was destroyed.
I think that was also one of the reasons why people lived longer. It was something to do with the firmament kept the sun from killing people as easily, or something along those lines.
However, theorists believe that there's still a firmament of some kind, and that the Earth sort of exists within a shell.
Isn't that
and
the
most
ozone?
of what I found with this related back to Hollow Earth theory, so I think they're kind of tied, if not directly. Men in Black is a concept that is rather well known, that government agents who simply wear a suit and use fake names appear to cover up evidence often. This relates to theories
Hmm.
such as polybius, which we'll get into later, or people going missing. And it's essentially the deepest level of government cover up you can go, that completely nameless and identificationless people will show up in black suits and change things however the government wants them. The Boy in the Box is a real world case that happened in 1957 in Philadelphia, in which a boy's body was found in a box on the side of the river, and he was never identified. This was weird because no one nearby reported a missing child, no orphanages reporting missing children, nothing. It was just a body found in a box for some reason, which implies murder or foul play, but no one ever knows who did.
That's so sad. And you know, it was probably either a mother, father got rid of him, or like you said, an orphanage got rid of him. An orphanage is a bit weird, but it was probably a mom or a dad. They probably accidentally. It was one of those things where they accidentally killed their kid, and they didn't know what to do, so they threw him in a box and put him somewhere randomly. And that's sad.
Did it, and there's never been any connection made. Most theories relate to the idea that it was a cover-up by an orphanage or things such as, but it doesn't change the fact that it's odd that a child could just disappear and no one would notice. Reality simulations is another setup. Basically, the whole Matrix idea that reality itself is either one giant simulation for everyone or certain
I mean, it's
individuals.
possible.
Clown sightings are in reference to in 2016.
Oh, I remember this.
Whenever various people showed up in clown costumes with knives.
Yeah,
and
this was
weapons and
weird.
began threatening people in public. What's interesting about this is ask yourself, do you know of anyone that dressed up as a clown? Or have you heard of anyone
No.
dressing up as a clown? And why
No,
did
it was just
happen
super
in
weird.
thousands all across the US at once? No one's ever came forward. There were never any public plans made. But yet, all at once, they just showed up and then went away. Weird. Divination is the idea that one can see the future or have premonitions of the future through supernatural means. So essentially
Cool.
through meditation or summoning, someone can figure out what will happen in the future. Space is fake is exactly what it says. Space is fake. That either the night sky
Sounds a bit
is
weird.
a simulation or it is a sort of curtain that's been put up by extraterrestrials in order to give the illusion of space, even though it's not real. Pantheism is
obviously.
a more traditional idea that there is not necessarily a God, but more so that God is a being completely outside the understanding of people and instead exists all around us everywhere that wants.
Isn't God that anyways?
A part of God. It is a very spiritualist idea of the universe. Intelligent design is exactly what it says, that people were made intelligently and with purpose as opposed to a random set of accidents or coincidences. And this is pretty much the basis of every religion, that people were created rather than accidentally. LA oil rigs was interesting, and I had no idea about it until reading this. Apparently in LA, regular oil rigs are not up to code or sightly for the city, so they're hidden in completely normal buildings like this. Every floor you see is fake. All of it is just an exterior covering, and inside is just a working oil rig, and these exist all down the street in LA.
Bruh, that's just an oil rig? That's so weird.
Also, this isn't really a theory, it's literally what it is. There are oil rigs working inside of fake buildings in LA. Ghost Girl is also very fake. I think this is just simply referring to the idea of a ghostly girl watching over people when they sleep, or in the corners when they are awake, which I think is something a lot of people can relate to, I hope. Operation Fishbowl was real-world events that happened in 1962, in which the government started launching nukes into the atmosphere and detonating them essentially to see what happened. It was called Operation Fishbowl because of the shape that the nuclear cloud would take when that high in the atmosphere.
Just
not only
random.
Does this probably have disastrous consequences on the weather and environment, but the whole thing Oppenheimer was afraid of, that the nuke could light the atmosphere on fire and kill us all, not 20 years later, they were directly firing them at the atmosphere to see what would happen. So,
bro,
good job, team. Archdemons and Archangels is another idea that comes from Christianity. Originally, Archangels were the lead warriors or chieftains of the angels. So as they were
like Michael,
heaven, they would become archdemons. So this is just the idea of these very powerful demons and angels existing. The Philosopher's Stone is an idea that was originally put forward by Charlemagne the Great of what is now Holy Roman Empire. That's it. The Philosopher's Stone was the basis of what is known as alchemy, which is essentially converting one element into a different kind of element.
Mhm.
This stone was something he wrote about several times in his findings, that when approaching another element could simply turn it into something else. So what ancient societies would know as magic, we would know as extreme radioactive properties or whatever have you with what theory you're following. What's interesting is the Philosopher's Stone, as it's mentioned, has never been found, although there are things similar. So it is, like I said, essentially the bedrock of what is now alchemy. My Red is Not Your Red is the once kind of novel but now overknown concept that just because I see a color one way does not mean you see a color one way. We could see completely different colors, but because we've both spent our entire life thinking that something is blue, we both call it blue without knowing we each see different kinds of blues. It's just that concept. Vampires, while at first may be seeming odd, it does make sense in the grander scheme of things and it's on this list. For example, take old world ideologies and think about why they believed in vampires the way they did. Things such as certain people need to be staked through the heart, or tied up, or in some cases flipped upside down in their coffin. What would the reason for that be unless they had seen something that made them think that was necessary? And it leads into this whole idea of maybe our understanding of humans in history isn't what we think it is. Aura is another setup one. It's essentially the idea that humans exude this spiritual energy around them that changes with their mood and things such as. And this goes into gravitational pulls and sonic vibrations of the earth and things such as. Francis Levy's handprint is interesting. I didn't know anything about this until doing the research for this video. In 1924, a man named Francis Levy was a firehouse worker who, while cleaning a window, got ordered to go away on a call. On that call, him along and 7 other crewmen died in a fire.
Oh.
After this whole event was over, someone tried to spray the window of the firehouse and his handprint would not come off. This got to the point that they used bleach, acid, pressure washers, all of it. And it became a novelty around the town. People would come to see it. The glass company came to try to see if they could figure it out. But for whatever reason, this handprint was perfectly formed onto this window. The ending is kind of ridiculous though. In 1944, a boy who was throwing newspapers through one and broke the window ending the legacy. But it is odd that this handprint stayed completely unfazed by all of the removal process for 20 years. Bohemian Grove is a 2,700-acre campsite in the western United States, which has been home to several presidents such as Reagan, Nixon, etc. What's weird about Bohemian Grove is the theories that go on around it. For example, there are no pictures taken during certain commencement ceremonies, and people who have claimed to sneak in and take pictures have gotten some weird stuff from it. This all goes back to the idea of secret societies and things that happen, but essentially Bohemian Grove is a gathering place.
So wait, this is a real photo? There's no way that's real. I can't tell because it's so grainy, but if that is a real photo, that's super weird, whatever's going on there.
For world elites to do who knows what. Lost Civilizations is simply in reference to the fact there are entire societies that are known about in ancient texts, but that we just can't find. The Mayans, for example, was supposed to have 3 giant cities, and only 2 have been discovered. With our understanding and GPS satellites, it's really weird that these entire civilizations just simply can't be found. The Vikings are another one. Several of the sites that they talk about being set up at or where they lived have just never been discovered. This goes into conspiracies of cover-ups or of information being hidden and things such as, but it's an interesting concept that these entire worlds can just disappear. Paranormal beings is also super vague, just supernatural entities that defy the normal realm of logic. Professional sports scripted is exactly what it says. The idea that companies and elites make up what happens in the games, even if the players aren't necessarily aware of it, in order to drive revenue in the right direction.
I don't know about all that.
Ticket sales or blah, 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 money, money, money.
I doubt
Snuff cinema in itself is not a theory, it's a real thing. It's simply the idea that people will actually take videos of people being murdered or things such as,
it's like dark web stuff. Yeah, dark web stuff.
Where most of the theory comes in is who makes these may be higher up elitist, or at least the buyers might be. So
probably just
while this is a real
sick individuals.
It gets a lot more creepy when you think about who may be consuming it. Gang stalking is a phenomenon that is mostly observed in schizophrenics, but it is the idea that several mundane people are following you at any given time. So, what that may mean practically is whenever you walk up to the mailbox, your neighbor looks at
Ooh.
you. Whenever you drive to work, a car pulls up beside you and it's kind of going the same speed. And when you get to work, someone keeps glancing at you. The idea of gang stalking is that all these people are in on it and are conspiring against.
Or they're attracted to you and they're just looking at you. That dude looking at you, he ain't stalking you. Well, he might be stalking you, but you know, in another way.
You for some reason. This is also seen a lot in conspiracy theorist circles, with ideas that people who know too much are being followed by essentially men in black in disguise. Experiments on humans also super vague, but as mentioned before, with things such as MK Ultra and experiments that we know happened in
Like World War II, yeah.
It's
I was
kind
just
of
about
a
to say
real
that.
thing. I guess the theory would be the extent of it or the modern
Like
application.
the Nazis and the
Since
like
extinction
twin
is the idea
stuff.
there have been 5 primary extinctions in history, such as the meteor and the ice age and things like that. And we
Okay.
are currently on the 6th extinction, which would be man and would be a man-made issue that we created ourselves.
I could see
Pseudosciences
that one.
relates to old world theories, or mostly old world theories, of things such as the 4 constants in the body being science or spiritualism, things such as. And essentially, where it relates to conspiracy theories, is saying that there is more credit to it than has been disproved by science, and the discredit of it is simply repression. The Saturn rings theory comes from the idea that the rings of Saturn were created when an asteroid collided into it some time ago, and the particles of that asteroid were simply caught in its gravitational pull and formed Saturn's rings.
That could be possible.
What gets creepy is thinking that Saturn, speaking in space, is not that far from us. So if something can hit it, something can hit us. Polar shift is essentially the idea that over time the Earth's magnetic poles have shifted, and this will inevitably lead to a cataclysmic event of tectonic plates smashing together and earthquakes and storms and what have you. It's essentially an end of the world idea. The Large Hadron Collider is a real thing that exists in, I believe, Germany. But the entire point of it is it works as essentially a giant.
Yeah, it was the thing that founded the God particle, wasn't it? What was it called? I think it was the Higgs boson, Higgs something like that. Higgs boson, I think it was.
Gun
I don't remember exactly.
At each other at speeds of light. What's interesting is the last time this was done, it created a new particle called the Higgs boson. What it essentially did was prevent the machine from being used further. And I should also mention, before this firing happened, there was a shock wave that ripped through the machine, damaging it and making them take more time to repair it. A physicist theorized that since time works as a 4th dimension, that shooting 2 particles together at such speeds would theoretically create a black hole. But since the way time and waves work, and there's people who can explain this much better than I can, shock waves ripple backwards through time in order to prevent us from causing an event that would theoretically destroy the future version. This all has to do with the idea of time as a 4th dimension, and we just move through it linearly, although it can be manipulated, and yada yada yada. It's really cool stuff. Look into it yourself if you like, but that's the idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't need to. Jeez.
Is a
I've heard of this.
Of space debris that passed near our sun some years ago.
It was like the first
from the research station of the same name.
The first time something came from, I think, interstellar space or something like that. It was the first time it came into our atmosphere, or into our solar system. The first recorded one that ever happened, I think. I think that's what it is.
What was interesting is that analyzing the particles of this, it seemed to be rather homey to us. It contained carbon and things that look like Earth and stuff such as, and was probably launched after a star exploded some however many galaxies away.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the idea that if that Earth was destroyed, and also keep in mind, this thing would have been a whole lot bigger than our Earth. If that super Earth was destroyed by its sun exploding, what means the same couldn't happen to us? The World War II Black Book was a book that was found in Berlin in 1945 that had the name of several British citizens, in fact thousands of them, with their names, addresses, and places of work that were essentially on a hit list, so to speak, if Germany was to win the war. What's weird about this is why the Black Book would still exist at such a point as 1945 when Germany was pushed all the way into Berlin. And the details are that it was found in a sofa somewhere in Berlin, and it couldn't have been the Reichstag because that place was absolutely burned to the ground.
Yeah,
So there
that's
are several
weird.
theories about why this book was created, if this book is real, etc., etc. Fish
Oh,
rain
they
is a
don't even know if
phenomena
it's
that
real.
occurs.
Oh, I thought they meant that they found the book and they didn't know why it was still there, but they think. I don't think I understood that. Let me rehear that. I'll skip this for y'all. Okay, so yeah, they found it, but it's almost no like records of it being found. That one's weird.
Fish rain is a phenomenon that occurs for seemingly no reason, in which various times throughout history, fish have begun to fall from the sky. Similar things have happened with rats, snakes, etc. The
What?
leading theory is that somewhere hundreds of miles away, a tornado happened that either pulled these things out of the water or off of land and threw them that far. But even then, that doesn't
That's
necessarily make sense looking
crazy.
at some of the specific instances it's happened. So it's just weird. Figure it out for yourself. Clinton body doubles is exactly what it says. That several times in the public, the Clintons have used body doubles at either politically challenging times or times they were under scrutiny in order to not die. The butterfly effect is a
Makes sense.
concept that mostly
Oh,
relates to time
this
travel
stuff's
theory and
scary.
things such as that one very minor change will cause a series of changes to happen afterwards that can affect the course of history. For example, if I was to simply do this video a minute longer and not leave the house, well, that could cause me to end up in a car accident that may kill me or injure me or something rather, which would change the course of history all because of one seemingly meaningless task. This is where you hear the whole don't go back into the past and flip over a stone, you could change world history. This is just that laid out. Ninjas are a Japanese legend of these giant human-like sort of porpoise-looking creatures that roam in the Pacific Ocean
That's
and
creepy.
sing sailors into their death.
Oh,
These
they're
are
like
very different from
sirens.
mermaids, not only in their appearance, but the fact they are much, much larger. I believe up to 50 feet in some of the legends descriptions.
Bruh.
But what's also interesting is that there are several very
Well, I
similar
don't go in
things
the
to
water.
legends mentioned in Viking culture and in Indian culture and things such as, which makes it weird considering these tribes have never had contact with each other. So,
Hmm.
the Patterson-Gimlin massacre
Oh
is
yeah.
in reference to the
Oh.
Patterson-Gimlin tape.
Okay. I was about to say I've heard this tape, but massacre. I don't know what that
For those
means.
who don't know, it is the very famous video or supposed first sighting of Bigfoot. If you watch the entire tape, at the beginning there seems to be something on the ground that appears as a pool of blood, and the men in the video are washing blood off of their hands. The idea of this being that these people were up there hunting for Bigfoot and simply started taking the video as the last one was leaving or walking around the campground.
Oh,
This
that's
leads into the
sad.
idea among Bigfoot hunters that the reason we don't see them is that they were hunted out by people, and what we're seemingly watching here is the last group near the public eye being massacred. When
Oh.
I mentioned at the beginning, there are things that can get me kicked off of YouTube immediately. This is what I was referring to.
Oh.
So feel free to look it up in your own time. I'm going to be very light with it.
Okay.
The Houdin Plan was an idea imagined by anthropologist Edward Houdin, which essentially said after World War II they needed to do something about the Germans, and the best thing to do was something called the Great Replacement Theory. And I'm going to stop talking there and you can figure it out for yourself. The oil pit
Okay.
squid was discovered in Indiana, in which, while cultivating an oil source, there was an 8 to 12-inch squid that popped out, and supposedly this has happened more than once by oil crews in the area. This makes absolutely no sense because the squid shouldn't be able to survive in oil, and why is it in the middle of landlocked Indiana? A lot of the information I found on this related back to the hollow earth idea. Regardless of what your theory is on it, it's very weird that this thing exists at all. And then lastly, I'm going to get into the two most interesting theories that I found on this tier, and I
Yeah,
believe that
I'll
they are
finish up
interconnected
this.
to each other. The
Then I'll
first
stop
is
it.
the people of the mount theory. The background of it essentially works like this. In the 1820s, there was an animal researcher who was trying to figure out why lemurs existed in some parts of the world and not others, and seemingly skip giant areas. This was one of the first groundworks that led to the idea of Pangea, and that all of the continents were originally pushed together. However, even going off of Pangea, that would mean there was a giant portion of land that just doesn't exist anymore, with the idea being
Like
that when the
Atlantis?
plate shifted, it simply sank below water. The name of this unidentified content was called Lemuria. Get it? Lemuria. Near the coast of where this supposed Lemuria is supposed to be is an area known as Mount Shasta. Locals have said that at night you can see people leaving in robes. And these people are tall, like much taller than any person can be, 9 to 10 feet. Supposedly beneath Mount Shasta is a completely hollow ground, and that the survivors of this Lemuria sought it for shelter and have lived under there, untouched by society ever since. In 1904, a researcher went to Mount Shasta and said he found miles and miles of underground caves full of gold and silver and crystals and things such as, but whenever he put together a team to go research it, he disappeared, which is weird. Most of what I found
Yeah,
about
that is
Lemurians
weird.
and the people of the Mount again relates back to Hollow Earth theory, which is why I think that was mentioned so much in this stage. The idea that there is this untouched race of people existing in underground caves in the modern times. This also relates to something else on this tier, which is crystal skulls. There
Indiana
are
Jones?
14 perfectly made crystal skulls that have been found variously around the world, but what's odd about them is while they're all made exactly the same, no one can place where they came from. They were each recovered from different dig sites and seem to have the same properties as one another, yet no one really knows where they came from. And every accusation where they came from, such as pre-Columbia or Spain or whatever, has been proved false. According to the legend surrounding these skulls, though, they supposedly contain energy. Anyone who touches the skull or comes into contact with it shares their memories with it, and then that is passed on to the next handler, and so on and so forth. What's interesting about this is part of what the researcher mentioned who got lost in the Mount Shasta cave in 1904 is that they communicated using crystals. When I was reading this for this tier, keep in mind these are two different theories, I thought it was wild that these crystals that Lemurians have to supposedly communicate with each other seem to be the same things that these skulls were that supposedly communicate with each other, and no one knew where the skulls came from, and it related back to Lemuria.
Oh, that's
Again,
cool.
to clarify, I don't believe in this. I think it's neat. So to encompass this whole theory together, especially with other stuff seen in the tier, that would mean that the Lemurians did go underground but found either the Agartha beneath Earth or at least hidden passageways that work all the way under Earth, and there is an entire civilization of humanity existing apart from ourselves underground, and periodically their belongings, such as these crystal skulls, are found in other parts of the world. So there's my huge headcanon for secret underground mole people. Tier 3 is...
Okay. We'll stop there. So many theories. A lot of them, of course I don't believe in most any of it. Some of them were actually plausible. Some of them were government stuff. So, I mean, they were unclassified documents. So, obviously, I wouldn't say obviously they're true, but obviously there's some credibility to them. Whereas they're not theories anymore. They're more of a plausible, thing that happened. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'll be sure to watch the rest of this video. It seems really cool, especially since we haven't even gotten into some of the crazier stuff. He just kind of, some of this stuff was still in the realm of like possibility, or not possibility, still within the realm of me knowing some of it, because there was a few things in tier 2, not many actually, but a few things in tier 2 that I know. But I imagine once it gets further along, I might not know anything at all, and that'll be pretty cool. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, obviously like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.